All right. In the studio today, we have a friend and training partner of mine, Matt Sharpe. I guess I feel like I've been saying that every single podcast, that every guest is a friend and training partner, but I guess they kind of are. And so that's really good because it had a really interesting conversation with Matt, really good rapport and good buddy, just overall good dude. He represented Canada at the 2021 Tokyo Olympics and has shifted his focus post-Olympics to 70.3 racing and growing a business called The Tempo, which is a twice weekly newsletter, which is giving you all the juicy details of the happenings in triathlon for that week. He happens to live 2 houses down from me. We crashed his living situation. Jeannie and I are now neighbors with him as well in Boulder, so get to see him and his wife Kristen and their dog Reggie quite a bunch. And so, yeah, really fun to get to know him and his wife. Overall, good man, great for the sport. So enjoy today's episode with the man affectionately known as Sharpie. All right, welcome to another episode of the Endurance Matters podcast. I'm your host, Justin Metzler, and I'm super excited to welcome Mr. Matt Sharpe in the studio today. Matt, how you doing?
I'm good. Super happy to be here. Super happy to be, hanging out, chatting with you. It's a way I'd love to spend my Monday.
I mean, we kind of do this multiple times a week anyways on the bike, so it's pretty easy. But now, we get to have the audience kind of like drop into a conversation that we would typically have. I start off all the pods with a icebreaker. Hard-hitting question.
Okay.
So here we go.
Okay, I'm ready.
If there was a whey protein eating contest, who could consume more in one sitting without getting their stomach pumped? You, Millie, or Reggie?
I mean, I've seen what Millie can do firsthand, your dog, and it's extraordinary for a dog her size. So I do think I could take her down, but she would put up a good fight for sure.
Yeah, 100%. For those listening, Millie, Matt, and his wife, Kirsten, were doing us a very solid favor by looking after Millie, and she got into the whey protein powder.
She did. Although, I didn't do my job of, taking care of her and putting her where she needed to go. So that was on me. That's
just our dog, Millie, being Millie. And, Reggie, Matt's dog, was just big lab, not a care in the world. He was looking at Millie like, what are you doing?
It was quite the scene when we came home, but we're all good now. We're all good.
Everyone's fine. Yeah. Everyone's happy, and everyone's back to their normal routine, normal playing. So, Matt and I had coffee this week. We were brainstorming some topics for this conversation, and definitely want to get into some of the things that you're working on now. But I want to go back because you were being super Canadian and diverting the attention away from yourself. But I want to highlight some of Matt's successes along the way. So Matt was a 2021 Olympian in Tokyo. Mm-hmm. He had podium finishes at 70.3 Santa Cruz and just a couple weeks ago at 70.3 Michigan, which I was there on course watching that happen. Very impressive.
Thank you.
A big win on long course debut at 70.3 Boulder in 2022, where he beat me. I was second place by 52 seconds, so that was obviously the best result of your career.
It was the best result of my career for sure. A win's a win, and it was a tough day. You made it hard for me, especially at the end when I think you were definitely coming back on me for sure. So that was a good battle.
Definitely. So that, Matt, very successful triathlete. Tell me a little bit more. I want to hear more about kind of your journey in triathlon. Like, how did you get started? Because you've been doing triathlon forever.
Yeah, no, I haven't been doing long course triathlon for that long, but I've been in the game for, I want to say like 20 years or whatever. I mean, if you include when I did my first race when I was 9 years old. And that was up in Vancouver Island. They had a big series or a big kind of initiative in Canada called the Kids of Steel. And I started doing that when I was 9 years old, which is crazy because I'm 33 now. So I've been in the game a long time. I was doing triathlon kind of just as a part of just, other kid activities. I was doing swim club. I was playing a little bit of golf. I was doing track and field. I like to mountain bike. So, just try to do as many things as possible. But then kind of, I guess early on found a bit of, success. And, when you're a kid, if you're doing well at something, you want to keep doing at it for sure. So eventually just kind of went through the rungs of sport and the rungs of kind of the high performance ladder. So did youth racing for a long time and jumped up to the junior racing. And I was always looking for kind of that next level or that next step in the competition. So, would go to what they had British Columbia Summer Games. So that was kind of a big step when I was a kid. And then, what's next? Well, there's like a junior series, and then, you can go to, junior world championships. So I was always chasing kind of the next rung in the ladder. And yeah, that eventually, over the years went to Commonwealth Games, went to, elite world championships, and eventually the Olympics.
Yeah, that's, I mean, very cool. How much of that experience were you kind of like the guy in Triathlon Canada? Were you kind of like pegged early on as one of the dudes who could eventually make it to the Olympics? Were you kind of like in their feeder program, or was it really your passion for triathlon that kept you sort of like showing up year after year trying to find that next level?
Yeah, I mean, I always had a passion for competing and pushing myself, and that always kind of took hold, when things maybe weren't going so well. But I would say, yeah, I was probably a targeted athlete, what you would say, for Triathlon Canada. Because especially, where I grew up, I kind of grew up like a couple hours away from the National Training Center, where Simon Whitfield, who won the first Olympic gold medal for triathlon, trained. And so that also kind of, it made me think, oh, like we're good at this, or we can be good at this. And so, yeah, just being in that orbit kind of just kept me very engaged as well, and engaged with Triathlon Canada. So I joined, I guess, that National Training Center when I was about 16, 17. And yeah, it was just kind of immersed in that really high performance environment from, when I was quite a young age. Over that time, was London sort of on your radar, or Rio, or was it always kind of like a Tokyo project? Yeah, I'd say like for a bit there, I was like, oh, maybe you can crack Rio and get on that start line. But there was a period, I mean, for a lot of time when I was coming up, every year, like I would have some kind of injury, right? I mean, part of that was just being a taller guy and growing and just being that kind of age as like a junior and U23. It's hard to kind of, do that training volume maybe without getting, a few stress whatevers here and there.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, basically before Rio, I just missed way too much racing and training really to even be considered for that team. And there was a bunch of good guys ahead of me too, who I don't even know, maybe I wouldn't have been able to challenge them anyways. But yeah, kind of, it was interesting because that whole Olympic run, I guess, which wasn't much of a run, it definitely was a huge learning time for me in terms of, what it takes to, make an Olympic team. And at the time too, I was kind of being exposed to a very high performance training group with Olympic level athletes. So yeah, I got to see what they did every day and in and out in training. But yeah, I wasn't able to stay healthy. And I think that was one of the biggest probably learning periods for me in terms of, getting to where I am today, was this whole thing where, I was getting injured a lot when I was growing up, but generally still performing quite well. But, it comes a time where everybody's performing well and you got to stay healthy. And so, I realized quickly, it was like, okay, what am I going to do to put myself in that position for Tokyo? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I had different coaches, I had different training stimulus, but I kept getting injured. So it's like, okay, well, what's kind of the constant? What's the common denominator? And at the end of the day, it was me. Like, I was making the decision to do a run when, my Achilles was a little sore, push through something when my shoulder was sore. And so once I kind of figured out, I'm the reason I'm getting injured and I can kind of take control of this and make better decisions, that's when things started going in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. It takes a lot of maturity and confidence, I think, to come to that realization of, the way for me to get faster is sometimes to take a step back.
And a lot of mistakes too, for me anyways.
Yeah,
there was a lot of mistakes.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess so you must have been 29 approaching 30 when you went to the Olympics?
Yeah, when I went to Tokyo, I was, 29, 30, kind of that age.
So you had been in a high performance environment for almost 10 years at that point with a lot of setbacks and injuries. Was there moments along the way where you felt to yourself, okay, I just can't handle another setback. It's time for me to transition into long course, another course of career? Were there times that you felt that?
Yeah, definitely a few tough moments. Kind of like I was alluding to with that injury stuff. There was a time, it was like I'd come off the 2015 season and yeah, just had a ton of injuries and was basically kicked off the national team. Kind of lost my funding and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, yeah, like if I'm going to be able to continue this path in high performance sport, I kind of need to get my stuff together. And so that's when I really kind of took ownership of that injury stuff. And that was a huge moment for me. Just figuring that out, because then once I was able to stay healthy and stay consistent, I was getting to the races and I was getting that high level experience and learning along the way as well. But just, putting myself on the start line was the biggest thing, because I had the opportunity to get the points. I had the opportunity to be on those teams and stuff. And so, yeah, that was probably a big moment. I would say another, really tough period was kind of around when Tokyo was supposed to be. So there was, for a few years there, I was back kind of in the National Performance Center in Canada. And yeah, there was just, I was a coach I was working with at the time and we were working with, and, we had our kind of bumps in the road along the way, but things were, generally okay. But kind of, I guess, through the years, the relationship, we struggled and it was generally productive, but then there became kind of a turning point where it was clear, this coach wasn't happy with me for whatever reason. We definitely had some struggles, and the environment for me just, it really became untenable for me to continue to be there. And basically I had to put up my hand and say, I'm leaving this National Performance Center environment, because otherwise I'm not going to see, it through to Tokyo. I'm not going to be able to even achieve, like even put myself in the position to be at the Olympics. And kind of around that time too, there was a separate investigation into this coach and his behavior. And they, the authorities, kind of World Triathlon, had contacted me and just said, hey, can you share your experiences? And I did. Ultimately, they asked me to open up a separate investigation. And so I did that, and that was quite hard. But at the end of the day, if it was going to prevent other athletes from going through what I did, then, that was going to be the ultimate thing. So yeah, kind of had to go through this investigation a lot of the time through the heavy qualifying period for Tokyo. So that was a difficult time, but ultimately it felt like I was doing the right thing. And especially if not for me, for future generations. And yeah, after that, all went down and the smoke all cleared, the coach, he left, which was good for the organization. And it's clear today now that Triathlon Canada is in a much better state for the athletes. And ultimately that was a huge win for sure.
Yep. So just to get the timeline right, it was 2019 the investigation was going on, or 2020?
This was 2020, 2021.
Wow. So it's like really a hectic time with the postponement. You've got the pandemic. You've personally got an investigation with your coaching environment. Yeah. And you're trying to, you hadn't been selected for the games yet, right?
No, they really didn't want to. It's funny, like through the whole, ultimately my ticket to getting to Tokyo and being at the Olympics was to play a team role at the games. And I had no problem with that. For the listeners who don't understand, basically this involves like helping the targeted athlete, get through the swim okay. Once they get on the bike, keep them near the front of the bike packs, keep them out of trouble on the corners and in the group and stuff, because things can go crazy when you're out there racing. For sure. So, that was going to be how I got to the Olympics. And, I'd seen, I was a direct result of kind of like an Olympic medal. Like my journey, a lot of it started from Simon Whitfield's gold medal performance. So, knowing the impact a medal can have on a sport and just on a country in general, especially Canada, which we don't get a ton. Yeah, sure. For me, that was like a no-brainer, and I was super happy to do that. And through the way, I did everything I could, everything they asked. They said jump, I said how high, that kind of situation. We did the thing, like we won the test event in Tokyo in 2019. And honestly, that was probably one of the most well-executed races of my career. And I didn't even run. I didn't need to run because
you did your job.
I did the job on some of the bike. So like for me going to the Olympics, it was going to hinge on being a team player. And Yeah, I did everything through that period to be a team player. And it seemed like, especially once I was out of that, I'd said I can't be in this environment anymore. I kind of became a bit of like an existential threat, because if I succeeded without being in that environment, then maybe questions would be asked about that environment. And so they basically just made it as hard as possible for me to qualify, knowing that I was probably the only one who was going to be able to have it on the day to be able to do it. So yeah, that just made it really hard. But yeah, I was able to kind of just keep my head down, focus on what I can control. I had to jump through a lot of hoops kind of versus maybe some of the other athletes. I always had to report into the high performance director every month. I had to send him updates. I basically had to keep him aware of where I was all the time, what training I was doing, stimulus, all that kind of stuff. Whereas at the same time, in the performance center, there was just no accountability. The coach, he ended up sending these athletes to Kona to train because, I don't know, it was hot there. But I think from, and we all know from what we know in the industry, Kona is a nice place to race and have the world championships, but it's an awful place to train.
Not great training there.
No,
yeah. There's one road.
So a lot of the athletes, were injured out of that. And it just kind of, it was crazy to me how I was just under the microscope so much when I wasn't even the guy who was supposed to win the medal.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like the priorities were maybe a little bit skewed. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, do you look back on your entire ITU career? I think you had this big achievement of getting to the Olympics. Do you look back fondly on your ITU experience, or do you look back on maybe the tough times and wonder, could it have been different?
No, I mean, for me, I met so many amazing people, had so many amazing experiences. I met my wife doing World Triathlon ITU racing. So for me, it was all, it was all an incredible experience. And definitely I look back on it with pretty much only fond memories. My experience with Triathlon Canada at the end, it wasn't great. But ultimately, I think they're in a better place. So I look back on that experience. It was just another big learning experience and life experience for me that I'll take into the future.
Yeah. And I mean, just having been around you quite a lot, I can sense how much pride you have for the country of Canada and the fact that you represented them at the Olympic Games. And that's something that, regardless of the circumstance, no one can ever take away from you. And I think like that is a very cool thing to have done.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that was always my North Star kind of in the sport, was getting to the Olympics. And it wasn't how I envisioned it. I envisioned myself kind of racing for myself, but I mean, to be there and have that experience. And it was a really cool project. Like, I really wish, we had our targeted athlete, Tyler Misichuk. He was ready to win a medal for sure. He just, he got injured, and that was unfortunate. But, playing a role in that and feeling like I was making a difference, like that was incredible.
Yeah, that's huge. Yep. You mentioned meeting your wife, Kristen, who is also a good friend of ours. Yes. And so we know you guys pretty well. And I'm interested to hear how you guys met on the circuit, because, my wife, Jeannie, and I had a similar situation kind of meeting on the circuit. And I want to hear a little bit more about your role in Kirsten's journey recently, but tell me a little bit first about how you guys met and how that, maybe like the short version of it.
Short version. We were both training in Stellenbosch, South Africa, not like together, but we were both there ahead of a World Cup or World Series race or whatever in Cape Town, South Africa. And it was funny. She was there with like her USA teammates, including Kevin McDowell, who's a friend of mine, from way back in junior and stuff. We go way back. But yes, he knew I was there. So he was like, oh, you should come out for a bike ride with me and these other girls. And one of them was Kirsten. And I didn't really chat with her too much until the very end of the ride. And it was pretty funny. So we rolled up together, we were riding, and we were chatting, and she's like, oh, like, you're from Canada, like, where are you from? And where I'm from on Vancouver Island, like, it's not like a big place. I mean, it's not a big place. So I was kind of like, okay, like, I don't know if she's going to know where Victoria is. And so I was like, oh, like, yeah, I'm from the West Coast. Like, it's this, smaller city. Like, you probably don't know where it is. And she's like, she looked over at me and gave me this look. And she's like, try me. I'm from Canada. And I was like, oh. Anyways, I was able to recover from that. And we just kind of, after that and through kind of the next year, we kind of just kept in touch through messaging and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, things just kind of developed from there. But yeah, that was a tough origin story for me, but I was able to recover.
Yeah. And then they somewhat recently got married. And actually, Jeannie and I just happened to be in Hawaii the same time they were on their honeymoon.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, just like happened to both be in Kauai, and we went to this like crazy Hawaiian luau. Yeah,
that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we watched like that crazy show.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that was great. I would go back for sure. Kauai.
Yeah.
Shout out Kauai.
Totally. And so that was probably a couple years ago. And, you had gone to the Olympics in 2021. Kirsten had missed out on the Olympics in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a big drama with the USA triathlon, selection process. And it seemingly always is with many federations.
Always. Yep. That's a given. That's like priced in. Always going to be drama.
100%. And so Kirsten was on the outside looking in Tokyo. And I think for this year, it was obviously a big mission and a big goal for her to get to the games. And so I noticed, because we were on training camp with you guys in February, there was a big push for Kirsten to get to the Olympics in 2024 in Paris. It seemed like you had a pretty significant role in that. So I'm curious to hear about what your role was, maybe what some of those conversations were between you and her, or between you and her coaches, because it seemed like it was a really big focus for you guys as a team to get her to Paris.
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of said before, for me to get the Olympics, that was kind of my North Star. I achieved that. I know, Kirsten, she was the alternate in Rio, and that was kind of like, oh, wow, I'm the alternate. That's crazy. But then, when Tokyo came around and she was on the outside looking in, that was really tough for sure. And, she'd helped me in a lot of ways in getting to the Olympics as a partner or whatever. And so I was like, hey, now we got to do everything we can to try and get you to the games. So part of that, we hadn't really decided where we were going to live, but, for her to have the best chance and have the best access to resources and everything along the way, we had to be in the US. So we moved to Boulder here. Great spot to train for sure. Great spot for her to be, great people to train with. So yeah, in a lot of ways, most of our kind of big life decisions were calibrated around, what's going to be optimized for her kind of Olympic run. Over the years, obviously kind of I transitioned to long course racing, but the schedule and everything was a little more relaxed. So yeah, just, for me, I kind of, when Kirsten never needed me for training and help, over those years, I was there to help her out and do what I could and help her around the house and just, just kind of be a big support role for sure. And then, yeah, definitely, I think you noticed this spring and winter, I was definitely taking a really big role in her training as a training partner, not as a coach. She would never listen to me say anything like that, do program or anything. But yeah, I stepped up and just, literally there was a lot of days where I had to be your main training partner because ironically, and I've seen this over the years, the closer you get to the Olympics in terms of the time, is usually when people start to drop off or, so she had her training partners who maybe weren't going to go and they were kind of pursuing their own things. So yeah, just her schedule didn't align with a lot of people. She had some injury stuff that just made her training a little more day to day. So harder for people to really coordinate at times. So, I was basically the on-call training guy, which was, great for me. Obviously I was fit enough to help her hit her paces or whatever, swim, bike, and run. So yeah, I mean, I think she would rather not have me there all the time, but I was there, I was the one helping her out. And yeah, I definitely, like I talked about with being that Team Canada support role, for the games, being in this support role was incredibly fulfilling. And I definitely felt like I was able to help her, get to the place she needed to be to get on that team. So yeah, it was a lot of work, a lot of, sacrifices for me in terms of my training racing. Yeah. But at the end of the day, that was our goal, was to get her to the game. So whatever it took, that's what we were going to do.
Yeah. And for those that missed it, they were successful. Kirsten was selected to the Olympic team in Paris and competed in Paris. What was that feeling like for you guys when you got the call or the email that she got in?
Yeah, she got a call. It was funny because they said they were going to, tell the athletes on like the Friday, and then I don't think they budgeted enough time to actually go through all the criteria and stuff. So on Friday, they were like, oh, we're going to wait till Monday or something. And so, yeah, that was a very stressful weekend of
2
waiting.
days.
Yeah, it just, you're just waiting because there's like a lot of stuff hinges on this decision, right? Like in terms of what she's going to be doing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there was a very stressful wait for that. And then I was like, I think did a swim workout and she had her phone right beside the pool deck because like you just don't know if you're going to get a call or whatever.
For sure.
And I think she swam like garbage that day because just a lot of cortisol, a lot of stress. So that was a little tough. And I think it was on the drive back from the pool where, the high performance instructor is like, hey, can you take a call? So I think she pulled over to some random like church parking lot or something.
Perfect.
Which now when we go by, we're like, hey, that's a spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, she got the call and they told her that, she was on the team. They told her it was a no-brainer, which we were kind of like, just you never know with selection because it's discretionary. So you don't know necessarily what way they're going to go. But they told her it was a no-brainer and she's on the team. And that was a very, very special moment. Just, for her years and years of dedication and hard work. And she, achieved her goal of being on the team and trying to, win Team USA a medal.
And for you as well. I think that, there had to be a big sense of accomplishment. And I think also like as you guys progress as a couple and, you look back on your triathlon careers, you both will have Olympian, next to your name. And I think that's probably an important thing for the future to both have accomplished that goal,
Yeah, definitely. At the end of the day, let's say she didn't get the nod. I couldn't look back and be like, oh, what more could I have done? Like, I feel like we really, went the full distance, the full 9 yards or whatever on that. So, if it didn't go our way, then I wouldn't have any regrets. But definitely getting that call was incredibly special. It just, to feel like, I made a difference in her lifelong dream, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's huge. I want to transition a little bit to talking a little bit more about your mindset and kind of like who you are as a person. I think from the outside looking in, at least my perception is that you're like a very chilled guy.
Yeah.
And that you're very relaxed.
Yeah, spot on, pretty spot on.
Is that the truth or is that the like outside image that you're portraying to everyone?
No, I mean, I think like everyone, I get nervous, I get anxious, I get like worried about things, but I feel like my essence, is generally pretty chill. Like I'm not like going crazy in my mind. I don't know. I think, generally pretty relaxed dude for sure. Maybe too relaxed. Maybe I should get a little more, I don't know. On edge.
I don't know. No, you don't want any more edge. The less edge you can have, the better, I think. Like if there is going to be something that's going to give you some anxieties or stress you out, like what is that? Where's that going to come from?
At the end of the day, you're trying to be as successful as you can. So, I guess like those kind of performance parameters, if you're not performing, like I'll get stressed about like, maybe not, hitting podiums in these races or whatever. I don't know. I can't say I get like too stressed out. Like, I mean, obviously getting Kirsten on that Olympic team. Yeah. There was a lot of underlying stress during that period. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. And what are you doing if you are having, maybe it's you and Kirsten together, like what are the things that you do to bring you back to center, bring you back like to earth, to ground you? Yeah.
I mean, I think for us, really, it's like big picture, we're trying to train hard, trying to race hard. I don't think we take it as seriously or we just don't put like everything into sport. We know at the end of the day, if it stopped tomorrow, we'd be fine or whatever. Having Reg around always helps balance things out. The dog is always a good kind of like perspective, I guess. Every time you have a bad day out training or whatever, and you come home and you got this creature that just wants to be near you and wants to see you and tails wagging. That's, it keeps things in perspective for sure.
Yeah. They don't really care if you came 7th to 70.3.
Nope, they don't care if you didn't hit your, target watts on your FTP test or whatever. They're just happy to see you.
Yeah. 100%. I'm curious to hear more about the tempo. So this is a big project of yours. For those that don't know, Matt does a weekly or bi-weekly?
So it's twice a week. Is that bi-weekly?
I think bi-weekly.
Or is bi-weekly every 2 weeks? This is
that's a good question.
I know. I think it's I say twice weekly because
Twice weekly, yeah.
Bi-weekly I think is maybe once every 2 weeks, but we're definitely twice a week.
Twice a week. So anyways, that's a massive commitment. There's a twice a week newsletter that goes out to thousands of emails.
Yes. Yeah. We have just under 10,000 subscribers now for the Tempo News. Yeah. So it's funny. I guess to the genesis of this triathlon newsletter, my brother, he kind of does these newsletters up in Canada. He's got a few local news ones for different cities. He's got like a few irons in the fire, I guess. And this is his kind of thing. So for a while, back in 2022, early 2022, coming off Tokyo, he's like, oh, like, what do you think about maybe doing a triathlon newsletter? And I just didn't really have like, I guess maybe the mental bandwidth to like think about it. And then kind of as time went on, I was like, I'm getting older. Like I have a pretty good like athletic resume, obviously had a lot of accomplishments in the sporting world, but my actual resume was quite thin, in the pursuit of all this kind of stuff. So yeah, for me, I was kind of like, oh, well, maybe this can be something, kind of like my MBA in a way, like, a business initiative. Yeah. And so I guess from the outset, this was always kind of a thing to just gain experience. So basically, yeah, he was like, hey, you want to do this triathlon newsletter? And it was in November 2022 is when we launched it. And yeah, it kind of just been growing and building this newsletter and reaching, really engaged triathlon audience. It's been really fun to connect with so many different triathletes, in various stages. Like obviously I know, there's pro athletes like yourself who subscribe, and there's first timers, there's long time people who maybe don't even compete anymore, but still kind of want to be engaged in the community. So we get a lot of good feedback from kind of all constituents, which is really cool. So it feels like, we're, I guess, when these people engage with the newsletter, open it up and find something they're interested in, it kind of feels cool to, provide that.
100%. I think in a world where everything is going short form, everything is going 10-second clip, Instagram, TikTok, video format on YouTube, how do you create a product that is maybe a little bit more old school, like a newsletter, and make it attractive to all sort of age demographics?
Yeah, for sure. And, at the end of the day, you're going to be missing people. That's just the nature of our media environment. But yeah. I think what people really like about the newsletter is, and it isn't like a super long one. So it's kind of maybe the TikTok of triathlon newsletters. I don't know. But it's definitely more concise. Yeah. People can get in and get out, in a few minutes. If they don't have to read it all really, if they want to just check out the news, or we have lots of training tips and kind of like cool links, funny little reels as well. Just maybe to brighten the morning or something.
Yeah.
We're not going to hit everyone, but I think people really like having a lot of the triathlon world in one place. Sure. As we know, in our kind of very fractured media environment, it's hard to kind of get like, there's no more newspaper really.
Yeah, totally.
Like things are all over the place. You got to go all these different Instagram, whatever, TikTok, and get your whatever information. So I think people having kind of like a central source for info. We try not to be too biased one way or the other. I don't know how you don't have some bias when you have a human involved.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, people generally just seem to enjoy the content and get a lot of value out of it. I think writing is a bit of a strength of mine. So I think, being able to do that and I've been obviously working on that for a while. Just a lot of good feedback that way. So I think just having that central access point is good for people.
Yeah, I think, it's a really great newsletter if you haven't checked it out. I know that Matt works very hard on it. I think when you're doing something twice weekly, I mean, you say that it's short, but it's still longer form than a lot of things you can be doing in the media world. How much time a week are you putting into the Tempo, and sort of when you're thinking about, okay, I've got my training to do, I maybe have to still support Kirsten at some level as a partner and maybe as a training partner to a degree. how much other time throughout the day are you saying, hey, I really got to buckle down and write the tempo today?
Yeah, it's honestly like some days it's like, whoa, that was easy. And some days it's just, you're just grinding. Cause some days like there isn't, interesting news, or you kind of have to like find the stories that are out there that maybe aren't being told as much. And yeah, it's definitely honestly a pure number. I mean, the days that I do write the newsletter, it's probably 4 hours at least of like dedicated time working on it. But then, at the end of the day, I love the sport. I'm always consuming content around the sport. So I'm always on in terms of like gathering information. But when I'm sitting down to it, it's definitely an 8 to 10 hour a week kind of thing. But I kind of have to put in that time to, make it as good as it can be.
Yeah.
And I think the readers, I think they definitely appreciate, the time that's put into it. And at the end of the day, if I'm not making something that is worth their time, then they don't open it, So I got to put the effort in because, it's got to be worth it for people to read. Like I think about like when I open an email, when I engage with something like, I'm pretty ruthless about what I engage with. So I got to have that same level for me, I guess.
Have you been able to draw a correlation between how much time and effort you maybe put into a certain newsletter versus the actual viewership? Like that's maybe not a super quantitative, there's maybe not a way to quantify that 100%, but just from what you've seen, are you like, oh, if I really work hard on this one and write super well,
I feel like it's more like when interesting things are going on in the industry and people are a little bit more kind of engaged and they want to understand why things are happening. So, when the T100 releases their schedule, they want to know, okay, like I got to go read about this, but then why are they going to these places? Obviously we got Ironman World Championships coming up pretty soon. So, I think more of the readership will be definitely looking into what's going on with Kona and, just all around the split and stuff too. People want more information on that and the who, what, where, and why. So yeah, definitely when things, it's not necessarily maybe like when I do, maybe a better newsletter, a lot of times it just depends on what's going on in the triathlon world at large.
Yeah, sure. That's good. I mean, I think if you can show up and be consistent with the product that you're delivering and let the market sort of dictate what you can write about. I mean, there's going to be ebbs and flows in any sort of media, product that you're creating, especially something that is going to have a certain element of creativity, but you can only work with what you can work with. You can only make up so many stories if there's not actual news happening, especially if it's twice a week.
We've definitely recycled content too before, so that's okay. You're allowed to do that. Yeah. Not everybody sees it the first time.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
I would say one of the things that it's been super interesting, like with training. You're not trying to hit a home run every day. Like we go out and basically get like base hits every day, maybe a double. Doubles are nice.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's the same with the newsletter. Like I got to go out there. I'm not going to expect myself to hit a home run. Every once in a while, you get that one that's like, oh yeah, that was great. But yeah, day to day, mostly it's just base hits but obviously it compounds over time and it's very analogous to training. So I think having that sporting background has really served me well in this kind of media initiative and kind of entrepreneurial initiative.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like anything in life, if you are consistent with it, it'll grow over time. You get better at it. Hopefully I'm getting a little bit better at these podcasts.
You're crushing it.
So Matt is obviously very in tune. You're very in tune with what's going on in the sporting world. Like you said, you're pretty switched on to the happenings. And so I'm curious to get your perspective a little bit on the current state of the sport from a very insider perspective. Like how do you perceive generally the current state of triathlon?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I think big picture, when COVID happened, that was a huge hit to obviously triathlon and every other kind of like, I guess, endurance sport industry. Triathlon's been kind of climbing its way out of it, but I feel like there's a lot of kind of green shoots in areas. Like I talk to race directors, I talk to folks in the industry, and yeah, they're kind of seeing like this kind of return to normalcy. And, one of the things that I guess I'm watching for kind of maybe medium term, maybe the next 5 years or so, I really believe there's kind of a bit of a demographic wave coming. So I think we all have seen, a lot of these like run clubs, the rise of the run clubs and the running boom that's going on. right now. And I do believe in, you know, people get into running and then, you know, they do the whatever marathons and stuff. And then, yeah, they kind of look for the next thing. And I think triathlon, if it positions itself right, if it's ready to accept, you know, it could definitely be a huge part of what the next thing is for these folks. So, and it's similar actually to kind of the 70s, there was a big running boom. And then I would say in the 80s is when triathlon really took off. And yeah, I think our cohort, the millennials, you're going to see a lot of them kind of looking, they're doing running now, but they're looking for that next thing. So I think, yeah, in the next 5 years or so, you know, maybe if things are a little slow now, just wait, because I think they're going to pick up again. And yeah, these, you know, Ironmans, local race directors, everybody just needs to be ready for the wave that's coming.
Yeah, and maybe this is me being a little bit naive to what's happening in the actual business world, but at least the people who I know who are in like the millennials in the traditional business sense, a lot of them have transitioned to this like sort of remote work situation. And I think the biggest barrier from my perspective for age groupers is just time, because the difference between preparing for a 5K or a marathon even is a lot different to preparing for an Ironman triathlon. I feel like the investment of time and training has to go up to a certain degree. You can't get by with 5 hours of training a week for an Ironman. So maybe there is going to be this boom. I'm very hopeful that there is going to be this boom, like you're saying, with millennials who are maybe have a high percentage of them that maybe work from home or have a hybrid work schedule where they can implement a little bit more training and take on a bigger goal. How do you feel like so I mean, you obviously feel positively about the state of triathlon as a whole. How do you feel like it maybe it differs from the age grouper perspective versus the professional perspective?
Yeah, I think for age group athletes, you know, there's a good amount of races still out there. I know a race director I've been talking to somewhat recently, you know, he said this is his best year for participants and participation. So yeah, I think for the age grouper side, there's just, I think, like I was talking about, you know, with this millennial cohort, and like you were saying, you know, they're having kids and really get into the, you know, a heavy part of their careers. I think one of the things that folks need to do to reach these people is to kind of meet them where they are. I think we're seeing, you know, big picture, these longer distance, full distance races. You're seeing a lot of them being cut back, but it seems like every other week you're seeing a lot of these half Ironman and middle distance races be announced. So I think they're doing a good job responding because, yeah, like you said, you know, time is a scarce resource. And you only have time like to train for a half. Like I think that half distance is very sustainable in terms of like if you have a job, if you have a family. I think you can get away with not crazy amounts of time away from them for sure. To do a half, but to do an Ironman. So that's where you're seeing, I think, the Ironman distance getting cut back a bit. In terms of the pro racing, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's never been better in terms of these different series and options for pro racing. Obviously, the Ironman Pro Series, which thank you T100 for forcing Ironman's hand and making them have to come to the table to do more. Who knows if they would have? I don't think they would have if T100 wasn't around. So, yeah, you know, the rise of the T100. You have Super Tri. Obviously, Challenge is a huge presence as well. One of the things I think we're all kind of watching for in these next years is, you know, how it's going to shake up with these pro entities. Yeah. There's always rumblings of you know, angry investors and, you know, you're wondering how long can the music go on for? When's the music going to stop? I feel like I've got a bit more of a handle on, you know, what's going on at that level. And yeah, like you see, you know, Super trying to make these big inroads in North America because they see that as a growth area for them and buying these races. But if you look under the hood a little bit, you know, the races that they bought, the Chicago race, the New York City race, like they, you know, you see that like, oh, like these races weren't actually making that much money. So what are they going to do to, you know, spin up a better business out of this stuff? T100 as well, you know, they're basically creating these races, some of them from scratch. Yeah. Like we got Las Vegas coming up. It'll be interesting to see. I'll be watching, you know, the pro race. Obviously, it's going to be great action on the course, but I'll be watching and seeing how many folks are signed up for these races. What's the, you know, subscription level? Because for T100, you know, if they only have 8 to 9 races a year, you know, Ironman has 8 to 9 races a weekend.
It's like crazy, yeah.
That's so, you're kind of wondering, okay, like how long can we keep doing this for? But I think there is still runway for these entities. So yeah, you just want to see them succeed, but you got to pay attention to what's going on under the hood as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think these companies also, they're taking different approaches. You've got something like an Ironman who's always going to be hinged on the income of actually having participants at their races. And I think for them, the investment in the professionals actually isn't that significant in comparison to how much money they make from the age group side. And the age group perspective is not going away. So they have this like pretty much bulletproof business plan, and I'm a little bit worried about something like a Super Tri or a T100 that hinges on the consumability of the product. And I think they're still in the beta phase, they're still in the testing phase to absolutely see if middle distance triathlon with the T100 or super short triathlon and triathlon as a whole can be as consumable versus the investment.
Yeah, I think, and you alluded to it earlier, right? Like as a society, everything is going short term, short attention span. So when these, I guess Super Tri's the TikTok of triathlon in a way, but these guys are looking for broadcasts, these broadcast entities to pick them up and earn revenue from that. But, it was explained to me a while ago from one of a decent industry insider that, Ironman pays NBC to be broadcast every year.
Yeah.
So if the biggest and, whale in the industry is having to pay for distribution, what makes you think that, you're going to be able to sell, the T100 to whoever, Fox? I don't know. Yeah. Like to me, that doesn't add up, but I think that's why, T100, when they went originally, they said, we're not doing events. We can see now they're doing events. And some of them are doing quite well. I think, they bought that London Triathlon that has over 3,000 participants. That's healthy. They have the race in Singapore. That's got a lot of participants, and they're building that up. And that's kind of a marquee event in Asia now. They have Dubai coming up, which I also think is pretty well subscribed, and they're doing different events with that. So yeah, but I'm just like, is 8 enough or 8 to 10 or whatever? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, as a fan of the sport and someone whose career, and you're similar, I guess, where we're very invested and on multiple platforms in the sport, I think like it's only positive. I think looking at it from a little bit more of a skeptic's perspective, I think I'm curious to hear your take on, now there's this injection of money for the professionals. There's this injection of coverage. Everyone's got a YouTube channel now. There's more sponsorship dollars coming in. Are we getting further away from the pure aspect of the sport? You're getting more people getting convicted of doping. You're getting more people really focused on just trying to get more money, get a T100 contract, this, that, and the other. Are we getting further away from just the fact that triathlon at one point was a very pure endeavor? And now it's becoming a little bit maybe more vain.
Once money's involved, the pureness kind of washes away a little bit.
Yeah.
I do think the sport, it's just an incredibly positive sport, healthy lifestyle. I think there's just a ton of positives there. So in terms of like the purity, the Olympics used to be amateur, and now it's not, but it's never been better, as we saw in Paris this year. So yeah, I still think the sport is incredible. There's just so many different, aspects of it, I guess. You talk about the media side and whatnot, but everybody's going to find their way, and especially in the pro side, you find your way to make things happen. And yeah, for me, I think the sport it's still growing. It's still it's incredibly dynamic, and that's the most important thing. Is if you can. Any way you can create interest and buzz about triathlon, in a world of NFL and all those other things, we'll take it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you can look at it from a optimist perspective or a pessimist perspective. And I think, for whether you're an athlete, which we both are, or if you're a media person, like we both are, the more opportunity from a racing perspective and the more buzz for us to talk about and have conversations about, it's only positive,
Yeah, I guess from a less optimistic perspective, it's never been more competitive. It's never been a more competitive environment for everything, back when triathlon was coming on board in the 80s and really hitting its stride, there just wasn't as many options for athletes, I guess, out there. Now there's the rise of ultra running, the rise of trail running.
Yeah. Gravel.
Yeah. There's pickleball. You're at the end of the day, you're kind of competing with pickleball in a way.
This is the second time Matt's mentioned pickleball to me this week. I feel
know.
like he's gonna, put a little pickleball section in the tempo.
I would tear an ACL or something. I'd be the guy to do that. But yeah, at the end of the day, you have to, for every marginal consumer, these entities have to be competing hard and finding ways to engage them. So it's not an easy situation in a lot of ways, but I do think the sport has just so many positives. One of the things that I think we forget about triathlon, it was such a pioneer with, women's equality and prize money and everything. And I think that's in our DNA, and just kind of being innovative is also in triathlon's DNA. So I think with those two things, I think you're going to have success going forward.
Yeah, 100%. We've talked a little bit about the entities, whether it's Ironman or T100 or Super League. I want to get a little bit more microscopic. Who is maybe one game changer or one influencer or move maker in the industry, maybe as an athlete or as like a behind the scenes person, whether it's a coach or, a media person? Who's maybe one athlete and one media person who you're seeing as game changers right now? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, on the athlete side, you kind of have the obvious kind of like high level pros, the Lionels of the world, the Lucy Charles of the world, Sam Long is super dynamic. Those guys, I mean, they're the people who, especially someone like Lionel, really, who are kind of bringing in folks and engaging folks who aren't already in the sport somehow. People who don't even really know triathlon that well, know who Lionel is because of his story, because of his incredible media. I'm a huge fan. I think he does, what he's doing is great. And that's the thing, he transcends the sport. So I'd say someone like Lionel, it's an obvious choice, but
it's a great answer though.
It's kind of, it's obvious for a reason. He's bringing in people to the sport, and that's super huge. I think I'm super intrigued in, I guess, and this is kind of obvious too, but the new Ironman CEO, he's been in for, I guess, most of this year now, and you can kind of see his stamp on things. So, and just in like these interesting areas, like I remember, I feel like Ironman, the previous guy, Andrew, they were pretty ruthless with like, if things were happening in races, like cancellations or whatever, in terms of like flexibility to change things and have athletes be able to, get another race with their previous race entry. And I feel like the customer service aspect of this new CEO and the engagement is just a lot higher. So I think back in, I guess it was May or something, there was a crazy, this race 70.3 Morro Bay in California, there's crazy currents, like half the field, I think, didn't even finish or something. And pretty quickly, right after that, Ironman stepped up and I think offered race entries to other races or something, just something. It was like clear there had been a bit of a cultural shift, and you can see it as well. This is Scott Deroux, the new Ironman CEO. You can see kind of, him having his stamp on these events. There's definitely more activations with the brands. Trying to, I guess, bring more value to these events for the participants in a lot of ways. So it's been interesting to watch what he's been doing. And it seems like he's interested in pro racing as well. So I'm kind of curious to see what other initiatives he's going to keep bringing forward and how he's going to make his mark even more. Yeah.
Without a deep understanding of like the finances of the Ironman business, it seems as though the news, whoever is on the board now or the CEO is maybe taking a little bit of a step back on just trying to meet bottom line and trying to just make the investments in the professionals, in the customer service, and all of those things with the runway of maybe a 10-year plan or a 20-year plan or something to maybe grow the sport, because it really does hinge on us just getting more people into triathlon. So that requires a little bit of investment in the pros, a little bit more investment in customer service, getting good races out there, great race directors. And I mean, you meet the staff at the Ironman races, like they're all so good.
No, very good people. I mean, all the people in triathlon are awesome for sure. But I think like I alluded to before, I think it's coming out of COVID, they've really had to, step up their game. In a world of gravel racing, in a world where there's pickleball, they've had to like fight hard to keep the customers, and maybe that affects the bottom line a little bit. But if you have that retention, and they're also bringing in new data initiatives to like help retain their athletes. Cause a lot of triathlon athletes, maybe they want to do that Ironman or do that thing and then boom, bounce to the next thing. But if, they can retain them and keep them in the fold longer, then that's more revenue at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, you're competing for market share. The more you have, the better it is for everybody.
Truly.
So, yeah, I want to get into the rapid fire questions here, which we always wrap up the podcast with some rapid fire questions, but I'm curious as a final topic to kind of touch in on how much energy and time you personally see yourself investing into your racing and sort of continuing down that path of pursuing long course, trying to get on more podiums, trying to get more wins versus growing things like the tempo, getting more involved in sort of like maybe the community aspect and transitioning out of professional racing being your like North Star.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, being a pro racer and doing the newsletter, they're kind of complementary in a few ways. So, I enjoy racing, so I'm going to do it, for as long as it makes sense. I think being able to grow this newsletter, grow this kind of media initiative alongside the pro racing will just give me something to do pretty easily when, I decide to hang up the shoes or whatever. I think I've got at least a couple more years of like high level racing. But yeah, it's one of those things I think, just doing them at the same time, trying to do them as well as I can, and you'll see what happens.
Is there a goal that you're like, hey, in long course, I'd really like to accomplish X? In short course, you had the Olympics and you kind of had that finish line. Is there something in long course where you'll feel comfortable looking back on it when you're 45 being like, okay, I was able to accomplish that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely need to I've never done a full distance race, full distance Ironman or anything. So I definitely need to do one just to check that box for sure. But it would be cool to race in Kona and have a go at that. Probably the biggest one, which is actually kind of sad now. For so long, as I was growing up, the Ironman in Canada in Penticton, not too far away from where I'm from. That was just a huge presence every year. Everybody who did triathlon in the community would try and get up there for the Ironman Canada. And now they don't have it in Penticton anymore. And that's honestly a race that I would have loved to build a season around to try and win. But yeah, they still have now an Ironman in Canada. So it'd be cool to try and have a good go at that for sure.
It's good to hear because you're nonchalant about the racing. I'm just doing my best in training. I'm doing what I can. And then next thing you know, Matt's running has the fastest run at Michigan, getting on the podium. So I can still see that fire in there and that burn. And you're good for men's professional racing because you bring a dynamic to the race that I think is necessary.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm on the start line, you never know what's going to happen, but I always am going to try and execute with what I have the best I can. And I think in Michigan that other week, like a lot of things went in my favor, ended up getting on the podium. That was awesome. But yeah, I love to compete. Like I jumped in a 5K last weekend just cause I don't really have any races on the horizon for the next bit. And I just wanted to get amongst it and had a blast. So I don't know. I do love to race at the end of the day. I guess I have a pretty chill exterior, but when the gun goes off, I love to just get after it. Definitely love to compete.
That's going to have to be a whole nother episode because that is such an important skill, even looking at it from my coaching perspective of how do you get an athlete on the start line and get them to extract 100% of what they have on the day. If the buildup's been super clean and they're super fit and everything's going great, a lot of athletes can't even extract 100% on the day. But it seems like every time you rock up, you're getting 100% out of yourself.
Yeah, I actually have a kind of an interesting story along those lines. So, I mean, I get nervous for sure. I want to do well and whatnot. And at this one race, this is kind of like a changing of my mindset in racing. So at this one race in China we went to, there was basically, we could have rode our bikes to the course or got on this bus to go to the race course. And I was like, I don't want to ride with my bag to the course or whatever. So I threw my gear bag with everything, like race suit, race shoes, blah, 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 whatever, on this bus. And I rode over to the course. And when I got to the course, it was a World Cup race. There was 4 or 5 buses lined up. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go get my bag. And knocked on the first one. There's no bag on it. Knocked on the next one, no bag. I was like, okay, crap. Third one, nothing. Fourth one, nothing. And so all of a sudden, I went from thinking I'm a smart guy, saving my legs or whatever, to having no gear.
Yikes.
Well, I think we were 90 minutes or so out from the race start. And this is a World Cup in China. Like, this wasn't like a backyard kind of race. Like, I invested a lot to go there and trained a lot and everything. And oh my God, like, I wasn't even going to be able to race. I came all this way. So I ended up, talking to the guy there who's the head of the Chinese Triathlon Federation. He made some calls, and they found it on a bus that was back at the hotel, which is whatever far away. So, and it wasn't clear that it was going to actually come on time. So, I went from this mindset of like, oh, I got to do well, I want to perform, to like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to race. And yeah, so that was very stressful. So I had to like find this like relaxed place where like, I don't know, I just believed that it was going to come. And then, yeah, so eventually the bag did come, I want to say 15 minutes before the race starts. So I didn't even really get to warm up that much. I didn't get I was a scramble to set up my transition. And as we lined up, for this race start, it was such a different perspective than any other race I'd ever done, because I went from, oh, I'm going to do this, I got to do this, blah, blah, blah. It went to being like, oh my God, I get to race.
Yeah, I get to. Yeah,
I get to race. Like, this is amazing. I get to actually race. I had a pretty rough race. I probably was going to anyways without the bag thing, but literally from that moment on, I just had this complete shift in my attitude. Like, I just became, anytime I got to the start line, it was like, oh my God, like, I'm here. Like, I get to do this. I get to race. And I've carried that with me the whole way. And yeah, I think for me, just having that gratitude before you start, or even if you're nervous or you have a big goal, like just taking things back to like, oh, I'm in this position to be able to do this. Biggest mind shift for me.
That's huge. That's huge. All right. So I want to get into the rapid fire questions before we wrap up here. You ready to roll?
Ready. Rapid fire.
All right. What is your best ever race, in your opinion?
That's tough. I'd say that Tokyo test event race where did everything perfectly, executed perfectly, we won. That's big. Also, probably my favorite race is just I got on the podium at a World Cup race in Montreal, and that was just a huge kind of life thing for me. So yeah.
Canada, I'm sure that's
Canada
huge.
Was big.
Would you rather be sponsored by Big Maple Syrup or the feed?
Ooh, that's
Big
tough.
Maple.
That's tough. I mean, now that I'm here in Boulder, probably the feed. But if I was back up in Canada, Big Maple would be the one.
Paid
for sure.
him to say that.
Yeah.
All right. Who's your favorite training partner of all time?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I feel like Kevin McDowell. We've always been together. We've had a lot of great workouts, hard yards together. Kevin for sure.
Nice. What's the weirdest food combination that you enjoy?
Ooh. So I have this like kind of weird, gross, like pre-race breakfast. It's overnight oats, but it's like a combo with like orange juice and milk. And like, honestly, when I'm eating it, I'm like, why am I eating this? It's tangy, but like, I don't. It's
the
not.
Orange juice is in the oats.
It's in the oats.
Wow.
So it's an odd
psychotic
mix.
move.
I told people about this a while back too, and they were like, "What the hell?" So yeah, that's probably my weirdest one for sure.
Okay. I had a coach many years ago who made us have applesauce and whey protein before races.
Wow,
that was wild.
That's something.
Millie would love it. Tie the whole podcast full circle. What's the worst airplane legroom experience you've ever had?
Yeah, probably like Spirit or Frontier.
Yeah.
Just being on those planes for a guy like me. I don't know, background. Give him the background maybe of the leg room. But
well, Matt's always like, he's got some like Instagram. Everyone's going crazy on Instagram posting the crappy leg room they get, and I think Matt started like a trend here of posting leg room on airplanes.
So it started off. I just remember like there was a period where I was traveling a ton and people are like, wow, you get to go to all these amazing places. And like, yes, it was super cool. But like most of the flights, I was in the back of the bus, like just jammed in there. So I kind of wanted to show like, the not so good side of doing all the racing, traveling and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I just started posting it and like, it was super painful and people just loved it. And so, yeah, since like 2018, every once in a while, like there was a phase where it was like crazy. Like every day I was getting like 2 or 3. Now it's kind of tapered off, but there's still kind of the legroom photo stuff for sure. Send me your legroom. Tag me.
We got to have like a special like Discord for the 6'4 plus group because we feel it different, Yeah,
it hits.
All right, 2 more. So you've got 70.3 World Championship coming up. Big objective for you. Would you rather only ride your gravel bike in preparation or only ride your TT bike on the trainer?
I mean, if I want the best outcome, probably TT bike. But if I want to enjoy myself the most, probably the gravel bike.
So which one is it?
Well, I mean, probably TT bike. We'd have to go with that.
Yeah, he's going to have
I still want to compete. Like I told you, I want to compete. So
yeah, he's a serious man, so he's going to take it seriously. All right. What's a bucket list race or triathlon travel experience that you really want to do before you're retired?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate to travel a lot of places. Definitely one of my favorite places to race and train and stuff is New Zealand and going to the World Champs. Yeah, that's super awesome. I feel like I'd want to go somewhere kind of different. I've raced in like Romania before. That was kind of cool to go there. So anywhere, maybe like they've got like a race in Uzbekistan now. Like, I don't know. I've never been to Uzbekistan, Central Asia before. Like, it'd be kind of cool to go there and do that. So yeah, some crazy place like that. I don't know.
All right, maybe we'll have to tack that into my schedule too. We can have a little boys trip.
Yeah, I mean, Uzbekistan. You could have some fun there, I think.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Matt. I had a lot of fun and really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good fun to be here. Happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. All right. Really hope you enjoyed today's episode with Matt Sharpe. I know I did. It was really fun to hear some of those stories. I've spent a lot of time training with the guy, but I think until you get him in this environment, you don't necessarily get to hear all of those stories because you're not asking those like direct questions. So that was really fun for me. Looking forward to more episodes coming up. If you guys are enjoying the podcast, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a comment, share it. All of those things help us tremendously. And we will see you in the next episode. Peace.